Hello, thanks for joining us on this edition of your program, Focus Nigeria, coming to you on your channel of choice at this time, Africa Independent Television, AIT. My name is Benga Aruleba. It's the Thursday edition of the program, and today, essentially, we'll be looking at the impact of the African Free Trade Agreement, which has just been signed. It was signed about 2 weeks ago by 44 African countries. Nigeria and South Africa, two biggest economies in Africa, have not signed yet, but that has not delayed the takeoff of this continental trade agreement. So this morning, we'll be looking at the impact of Nigeria's refusal to sign this continental trade agreement. It's already generating a lot of controversy. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has said it is criminal for Nigeria not to sign this agreement, having spoke glowingly about it in January when it was unfolded at the AU summit. But we'll be looking at all of that this morning. Uche Igwe will be joining us. He's a development expert. He'll be joining us to take a look at that. But let's quickly update you on events shaping the polity at the moment. And it seems because the National Assembly is on recess at the moment, the rumblings within the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, has continued to dominate the polity. On Wednesday, governors on the platform of the party who had a meeting that was deadlocked on Tuesday at the presidential villa met again. In fact, we understand that they met severally in the night. And by Wednesday morning, they have been able to overcome their differences on the tenure elongation issue. The position right now is that the APC governors seem to be throwing their weight behind the position canvassed by the president, who is also the leader of the party, President Muhammadu Buhari, that it will be unconstitutional to extend the tenure of the current members of the National Working Committee beyond June this year, because it will have constitutional implication, and opponents of the party may take advantage of all of that. The governors have resolved all of that, and they are throwing their weight behind the proposal of the president. Here is a clip of how the governors resolve all of this.
There's no single crisis in APC. The issue was an issue of people who believed that we didn't have enough time to organize a party congress and then run election. And some people felt that it was a good idea, but the most important thing is that if we do that, it will be contravening both our party constitution and the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's the major issue that we have, that they call we have crisis. We have no crisis.
We consulted all the governors, 24 of the APC governors were on the same page with Mr. President, that we are going to respect our party constitution, we are going to respect our Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So therefore, we collectively agree that we will have congresses, all level, ward, local government, state, and national.
And of course, another development is that the National Assembly has become bereaved again. They have lost one of their members. The senator representing Katsina, is it Katsina South also, has just passed on. And so, in a space of a month, 3 members of the National Assembly have died. Senator Aliyu Wakil from Bauchi State, and of course, the deputy majority leader in the House passed on too. Now a senator has just passed on. We pray that God will halt this hand of death in the National Assembly. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, Uche Igwe will be here. He's a development expert, as we'll be taking a look at the African Free Trade Agreement, which has come into effect, but Nigeria has not signed, has not ratified, and is generating a lot of ripples. That's what we'll be looking at this morning.
The Continental Free Trade Area symbolizes our progress toward the ideal of African unity, but that is not the only reason why it is so historic. This agreement is about trade in goods and services. These are the kinds of complex products that drive high-income economies. African workers adding value in Africa, services offered by African professionals using the latest technologies, manufactured goods that are made in Africa, and less than 20% of Africa's trade is internal, meaning from one African country to another. However, in the world's richest regional trading blocs, the level of internal trade is 3 or 4 times higher. Increasing intra-African trade, however, does not mean doing less business with the rest of the world.
Free trade area for Africa is going to be like a flood, a trade flood that is going to lift all the boats. It is not so much about South Africa, that without South Africa this can't take off. No. It's much more about all of us as countries of Africa. This cannot be done without all the countries of Africa participating, big and small. And this is an opportunity that is going to yield great benefits for small countries as well as big countries. And in a way, this is going to create a level playing field for both small companies and big companies to be able to participate in real meaningful business of trading products or goods and services right across the African continent. And we, as political leaders, through this agreement are now going to open up pathways, avenues, opportunities for our economies to grow on the African continent.
All right, as we told you in our little opening there, today we will be looking at the African Free Trade Agreement, which has become operational now, even though 2 of Africa's biggest economies, that is talking about Nigeria and South Africa, were not there in Kigali, Rwanda, 2 weeks ago when the agreement was signed. But nonetheless, under the AU Charter, you only need 22 members out of the 55 members or so to sign an agreement to kickstart it, and that was achieved at the Kigali meeting. So the African free trade market has become operational, even though big brothers, Nigeria and South Africa, have not joined, have not signed yet. But the African Continent's Free Trade Zone Agreement is a huge project, according to the to reports. It aims at creating a single market. How will that work in the interest of Nigeria? Is that the reason why Nigeria is not signing yet? President Buhari was not in Kigali, and he says he's taking a second look at the details of that agreement to see how it may hurt Nigeria or how it will boost Nigeria's market. So I have joining me right about now to take a very critical look at the African free trade market and what it portends for Africa, and in Nigeria particularly. Uche Igwe is the Communications and Outreach Advisor, Open Government Partnership Nigeria. He's also a development expert. Good to see you, Uche.
Yeah, thank you.
And good to have you back in Nigeria too.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is your first media outing since you returned about a week ago or so.
Yes, that's my first media.
We've missed you on this platform.
Yes, I also like the way you're looking. You're looking as if today is Valentine's Day, all red.
Don't mind me. Good to see you.
Yeah,
all right, let's start on a general note. First, let's look at the details, including the hidden details. They said the devil is in the details. Let's look at the details of this Continental Free Trade Agreement, which has already been signed. We gather that as many as, how many countries? So many of them. But the 22-country benchmark was met, which means that over 22 African countries had already appended their signature to the agreement.
44 actually.
44 members out of 55 have already signed.
Yes.
Now let's look at this Continental Free Trade Agreement, how it came about and what is aimed at achieving.
Well, I think that this Continental Free Trade Agreement is just an expansion of what we have already. We have the regional economic zones like ECOWAS, we have the East African region. They all have, or we all had before now, clusters of regional agreements where there's free movement of goods, for instance, from Nigeria to Niger, from Nigeria to Cotonou, as it were, in the West African sub-region, or probably from Kenya to Uganda, as it were, in the East African region. So it's something that is pre-existing, that was literally expanded. And if you ask me, it's something that is, has got very huge potentials to Africa, especially populous countries like Nigeria. Nigeria, in my view, stands to be a huge beneficiary of whatever free movement of goods and indeed persons, because it's difficult for you to move goods without moving persons.
Yeah.
Yes, all across the continent. Before now, you know, Nigerians are found from Burundi to Kigali to South Africa to Uganda to Botswana to Zimbabwe. In fact, yesterday Nigeria spoke to me from Cape Verde. I don't know, you know, a tiny,
tiny Africa.
absolutely. So Nigerians are everywhere. So in my view, looking at that, whatever thing this kind of agreement sort of legitimizes that kind of freedom for goods. And for a place like Baga, for instance, I don't know whether
Baga is in the
Baga
Borno
is in the Borno state. People have forgotten that Baga has got one of the largest fish markets in Africa. So what it means is that you can, you know, from Baga, buy your fish and go and sell elsewhere, or come all the way from Niamey or somewhere to come and buy fish from Baga. I think it is potentially something positive. And like you said, Mr. President has not signed. I am confident that he will sign, but what I've been told has been going on is some consultation. He said he wanted to consult a little bit more about the benefits.
Particularly because of the opposition coming from within to it.
Well,
You see, because in January,
Yeah.
when the Agenda 2063 was unfolded, the Agenda 2063 is a 50-year developmental plan by the AU.
yes,
And it was anchored on 3 different projects. We have the single African air transport market, and then of course this continental free trade movement, free trade market is the second component of it. The third component of it, of course, is what they call the one single passport for Africa,
Yeah.
whereby you just, as an African, you just need one single passport. You know, we used to have the ECOWAS passport, that if you don't have a Nigerian passport, as a Nigerian you have the ECOWAS passport, you could use it to travel to other ECOWAS countries. You're going to be having a single passport, which they call the one single passport for Africa, which if you have,
you can travel.
you can travel to any country in Africa. So those were 3 projects under the Agenda 2063.
Yes.
And when it was unfolded at the AU summit in January, President Muhammadu Buhari had spoken positively, particularly about the continental free trade market. So what has changed between January and March when that agreement was supposed to be signed?
Well, I think that there are some segments of the Nigerian society who think, and rightly so, that the signing of this continental free trade agreement will cause a reduction in tariffs. Okay?
Yes.
That is true. But again, there's another side to it. As soon as this happens, if we have the right infrastructure, by the way, one of the 7 key pillars of this is infrastructure, you know, developing, you know, the right infrastructure for trade. If we do have the right infrastructure, what it means is that you can produce what you're wearing in Aba at a competitive price and go and sell in Kigali. So what it means is that what we potentially will lose in tariffs, we will gain in taxes. So what people do not understand is that as far as there is an enabling environment in terms of infrastructure development, and there are so many SMEs, potentially the country will gain in taxes. And you know that, you know, the in thing now is domestic revenue mobilization, you know, trying to think about alternatives to oil. So as soon as we have the right access to the African market, and indeed Nigeria stands a very strong position to gain and benefit from access to African market. And as soon as we do, what it means that there will be many SMEs, there will be much more money in terms of taxes. So whatever we should have lost net from the the tariffs that is going to be reduced, we will gain through taxes. For me, I think that, you know, I would prefer that we have we overcome our fears, you know, by looking at the real opportunities. Like I said, those who suggest there will be impact in terms of negative impact in terms of on as it relates to tariffs, they are right. But I want them to pause and look at the long-term opportunities for the trader in Baga and for the tailor in Aba, and then find out whether in the long term we will not be opening up, you know, a vista of opportunities for Nigeria.
That is one side of the coin.
Yes.
The other side of the coin, a few days ago, I read something. Of course, we all know Dangote has been expanding in Africa and all of that. I read something somewhere where, I mean, to the effect that a bag of cement
Yes.
in Ghana, for instance, produced by Dangote in Ghana,
Yes.
will cost you 890 naira.
Okay.
The same bag of cement produced by Dangote in Nigeria, as of today, goes for 2,600.
Okay.
The raw materials that you use to produce the Dangote cement in Ghana is taken from Nigeria
Okay.
and taken to Ghana.
Yes.
You produce, and a bag comes to 890 naira. You use the same raw material in Nigeria, a bag comes to 2,600 naira.
Okay. So, well, what it means is several.
Isn't there the possibility, therefore, for Nigerians, adventurous businessmen, traders, to go to Ghana, buy 800 naira, buy the same cement at 800 naira, and bring it to Nigeria to come and be selling at 2,600 naira?
Yeah. Well, that's
I'm looking at what would that do to Dangote cement in Nigeria, because I'm looking at the possibility that production cost is responsible for why it's a bag of cement produced by the same company is selling for 2,600 naira in Nigeria, and it's selling for 890 naira in Ghana, even though the raw materials is from Nigeria.
well, Wenga, this is simple economics. What are the reasons why is it that these raw materials that are available indigenously are more expensive where they are found?
No, the end product.
That's what I'm telling you. The end product produced here as the raw materials are available here. For me, simple economics will tell me that because the end products are here, nearness to, what do you call it now, basic economics, localization of industries and location of industries, nearness to raw material, my ABC of economics, my ECO 101 will tell me that it should be cheaper here than in Ghana because the raw materials are here. So can we, for 1 second, open up the reasons why they're more expensive here?
The other factors of production.
Well, the other factors of production could be infrastructure.
Exactly.
Now,
why I raised that issue was the point you made much earlier.
Yes, now.
Which is that it should help, this agreement, for instance,
Yes.
should help African countries address
Infrastructural
their
deficit.
infrastructural deficit.
Absolutely. So what is clear here is that we welcome this trade agreement. We welcome the issues you raised. But what it means is that as a simple Igbo man, I would like to go across to Ghana to buy, if it is cheaper in Ghana. It will force African governments to begin to focus on infrastructure, to make sure that, for instance, there's a boost in power, so that the man who is producing cement in Nigeria here will not have to run on diesel, for instance. I'm sure that security, power issues are part of the thing, transportation issues and all of that. Imagine if we have our rails fixed.
Yeah.
Imagine if we have...
You won't see Dangote trailers
absolutely
all over the roads,
absolutely.
falling the roads, breaking down.
So I think that is where the opportunities are in the long term. In the long term, we as a people and Nigerian government will now begin to think about ways to make sure that if it is so that at 890 you said in Ghana,
Yes.
we can get at 800 naira here. What do we need to do? So instead of consulting forever, what we need to do is to put together a team to say, what are the implications of this agreement on us? And
on the short run,
absolutely, short run,
on the short term,
medium term, and also in the long term. And what do we need to do urgently? Because at the end of the day, what this means is that we need to overcome the infrastructural challenge yesterday. Because as you said, and as you and I know, the agreement has kicked in anyway. So there will be free movement, of goods in Africa. At the end of the day, you know how our borders are.
Very porous.
So
You could smuggle a whole train.
So what are you saying?
With the long train.
So I think
out of our borders,
that the
nobody will see.
sooner this agreement is signed and we face the challenges and also reap the opportunities, the better. Because if at the end of the day, the movement of goods end up in Ghana, whether you agree or not, it will find its way to Aba, one way or the other. So is it not better we take the bull by the horn, sign the agreement, face the infrastructural issues, deal with them, and then provide opportunities, for Nigerians in the long term? For me, that is the way to go. Because of our population, because of quote-unquote availability of cheap labor, because of availability of raw materials, because of the industry in Nigeria, I think that potentially we may stand to be the highest beneficiaries of this continental trade agreement when we sign and again ratify. Of course, there's a role for the parliament and all of that.
Isn't there the possibility of Nigeria also becoming a dumping ground? Because that probably was a fear which was expressed by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, which may have made the president to want to tarry a while. They had advised or they had cautioned that Nigeria, because Nigeria is central to the discussion of free trade agreement, this country could become a dumping ground after signing this agreement. That's the view of those associations. I'm just paraphrasing what they said.
Now, let me tell you that we should, like I said earlier, we should stop being sentimental. This is simple economics. Is Nigeria not already a dumping ground? Many things that we use here are produced in China. The issue, the phenomenon of China in Nigeria and the way Chinese goods flood.
But most of them have high tariff. They still come in all the same because Nigerians have high taste. So, but if you now have, because what free trade zone means is that you have borderless.
I don't think that
Africa will become just one global village.
Yeah, I do not think that what it means is they force goods and services on you. What it means is that a bag of cement can come. You have a choice to buy Ghana cement, cement made in Ghana, cement made in Sierra Leone, or cement made in Nigeria. Now, for me, you will look at cost, which is the most important thing. I also look at quality. So if
you sign this agreement,
yes,
does that permit you to impose tariff arbitrarily?
No.
Exactly. So it ties your hand. You cannot impose tariff arbitrarily. What then stops a Nigerian businessman who wants to make money? Money is his motive. He goes to Ghana to import Dangote cement and he brings it to Nigeria.
That is same quality and cheaper.
That is the same quality and
cheaper.
Produced by the same company.
Okay.
And he's sure that it's the same quality. And he brings it to Nigeria. What does that make of the company that is existing in Nigeria?
What it makes the company, in my view,
don't also forget that Dangote is not the only one producing cement in Nigeria. You also have some other companies that are producing in Nigeria but don't produce outside of Nigeria.
What it means is that it will make companies to begin to become more innovative, because what I believe is that every company that has branches all over that's a potential beneficiary of this should be studying the agreement. What are the benefits? What do we need to do? So it makes companies to become more competitive. For me, if I have money as a consumer and I want to buy cement, I would first of all consider the quality of the cement and the price. And if I have good quality and good price of cement with cement made in Angola, I will obviously purchase cement made in Angola. That is simple. So what it means is that it gives a consumer choices,
I'm
for
speaking
instance.
to this example because Dangote, for instance, is not the only company producing cement in Nigeria.
Okay.
You have Bua, for instance.
You have
also
Ibeto.
producing. You have Ibeto. And if you look at the price range of the three companies, they are about the same.
Okay.
Because they are facing the same production
domestic
challenges.
conditions, yes,
Exactly.
absolutely.
But one has an edge over them because it's producing in an environment where those production challenges are minimal.
So it has a possibility of producing there and coming to sell here. So you are saying the same thing. You are saying that.
What does that then do to the other companies that are made to face the production challenges in Nigeria that they on their own cannot address?
What it means is that it will also make those companies to become more innovative. Does it mean that in the interim, while we are addressing the infrastructure challenges, it will be better to site your factory elsewhere? What you would tell me, oh, it will take away employment, well and good. But remember that Nigerians can also go and work there. What it means is that free movement of people and free movement of goods. So if it will serve me better as a producer to go and produce in Aflawo or somewhere and come and sell here, so be it. But what I'm saying is that some of these challenges you talk about,
so long as that opportunity is there, our infrastructural problems will not be addressed.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, what you are talking about is in the short term. In the long term, it is an emergency for Nigerian government to begin to breach the infrastructural gap. As far as I'm concerned, when the Nigerian Railway Corporation and the Ministry of Transportation under President Buhari and Honorable Rotimi Amechi, if they, for instance, keep to their promise that every state will be opened to the railway line, what it means is that some of these infrastructure gaps, if our power generation gap are breached in the next 3, 4, 5 years or so, these things we're talking about will depart completely. Now, are there going to be challenges for now? Yes, there will be challenges. Obviously, there is no way right now there are challenges. And for big players like Dangote, what they do is to continue to study the challenges because they have the huge capital and they have the global, the continental access. They try to overcome it. Okay? But this is for now. I am saying that in the next 5 years, if we take this seriously, we will still benefit. Some of these smaller companies who obviously are facing challenges will be able to become more competitive. So I think that for the sake of more employment, for the sake of more money through domestic revenue mobilization and then taxation, more industries and all of that, I think that it is in our interest, maybe not as much in the short term as it is in the medium and the long term, to sign this agreement. For me, I look at the future and I am not swayed by fears of the moment. I look at the opportunities also because Africa Nigeria is the giant of Africa. Yeah. We supply 180 million persons. It's no joke. So whether you build the factory in Angola or you build it in Ghana or you build it in Cairo, I am very sure that Nigerians who have the competence may find themselves there. So there is another side to it, that regardless of where you go also, because there is free movement of persons and there is free movement of goods, you will also find out that by the time you employ, don't they say if you have, how many Africans you must have a Nigerian?
In every 4th black man across the world.
So what are you saying? So
the 4th person is a Nigerian.
So that means that if they make a mistake, wherever they site the factory, even outside Africa, and employ 4 black men, there's a likelihood that they will employ 1 Nigerian. So what are you talking about? It's a huge opportunity for us going forward.
That would not address our huge unemployment challenges.
That
will also not, again, for me, we will still be growing other people's economy because whether we like it or not,
I don't think
Africa will still be a continent made up of those different economies.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. We have 180 million people. We have an opportunity, like I said, to develop Aba, to supply fabrics to the whole continent. As you supply the whole continent, you create employment. As you supply the whole continent, you pay taxes. And you don't pay taxes to Angolan government. You pay to Nigerian government, regardless of where you sell, as far as you site your factory here. And I want to tell you that we are just postponing the doomsday. It is important that the Nigerian government confront the infrastructural challenges urgently.
It will require a huge capital outlay.
And political will. And political will. Now,
those are 2 critical ingredients that government is very short of.
Well,
the capital outlay and the political will.
And I will not say that, there are a whole lot of innovative ways of doing it. There are PPP, public-private partnership. So what, in my view, the government needs to do is to have a critical look at the agreement and look at what is possible and look at what is not and make projections and call in for investment. When people...
Exactly, that was where I was
when investors... Yes.
Rather than let the outside world see the huge market that is in Africa.
Yeah.
We should, is it not possible for us to make to make Africa be seen in a different light, which is a land where the opportunities and the possibilities are aplenty. Not in terms of the market, in terms of you produce in your country and you dump on the market that is available. Instead, bring your expertise here, the raw materials are here, and come and do what we call make in Nigeria.
Now let me tell you
something.
Let me tell you
Don't
something.
produce
Something that will surprise you. Something that surprised you, Gbenga, is there's a book written by a friend of mine. His name is Professor Peter Lewis. He wrote about Nigeria.
Is it Nigerian?
No, he's a professor based in Johns Hopkins University, and he wrote a book about Nigeria and Indonesia. He called it Growing Apart. He talked about two quote-unquote potentially corrupt countries or actually corrupt countries, and the political elite in one country, Indonesia, looted the funds, public funds, and used it to develop Indonesia. And then the political elite in Nigeria looted the resources, public resources,
to develop other countries,
to put it in Swiss bank. So I don't know, and I'm being the devil's advocate here, that who knows, this Continental Free Trade Agreement may now begin to encourage our political elite. Probably if you
loot here and invest it here.
I don't know. It could be helpful, really.
Because I've not seen the details of this African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and I don't know whether there's anything that ties the hands of the member countries to ensure that goods produced from outside of the continent don't find their ways into the African market. I thought the essential thinking of African leaders would be to create the market here, create the jobs here. Don't let China or all those other developed countries produce and keep the job, produce there and bring the goods there.
Yeah.
And in other words, make Africa to continuously be a consumption economy.
Well, I think what is a very simple thing is to raise the tariffs on goods coming from outside Africa, especially China. I think that's a very simple thing, to make sure that at landing, the cost of these goods will be far higher than at landing, probably the one you source from Nigeria to Angola and vice versa. As soon as you do that, the consumer will, for the same quality, go for one that has a lower cost.
Is it not possible? Because that's one fear that has also been expressed in government circles.
Okay.
Which is that it is possible for all of those those developed countries that we are afraid may turn us to dumping ground to produce in their country, take it to a smaller African market, and then take advantage of the open markets and free borders in Africa. Change the label of a product that was produced in China, for instance, change it to that of, say, made in Benin Republic. Change the label there, turn it to made in Benin Republic. And in that case, it then comes under protection of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Well, and a Chinese, and otherwise made in China product gets to Benin Republic, gets transformed to made in Benin, and finds its way to the big market that everybody will be targeting,
and that is Nigeria.
Which is Nigeria.
Well, let me tell you, the thing you must not overlook is that there needs to be standards, there needs to be regulatory mechanisms put in place, there needs to be enforcement and everything. So I do not think that that is what you have just talked about is corruption and fraud, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that it will be eliminated completely. There will be the bad boys
how does Nigeria insulate itself from that?
Are also studying all of this. You'll be so surprised that Nigerians can be participants. But there is no country that has a monopoly of bad people. So who says that a Nigerian, what he needs is to just, proof free movement, to go to Cotonou and do exactly what you're talking about, and understand it with the domestic knowledge the person has about Nigeria, pushes the goods into Nigeria. It could be a Nigerian. I think what is important is to establish a regulatory framework, to make sure that, as a continent, we do not allow this to happen, or at least to reduce it to the barest minimum. Are there people, lawbreakers, who are willing, corruption is very smart to take advantage of all of this in the negative way? Yes. But are we, as a continent, able to generate, the political will to boost ourselves infrastructurally with these opportunities and create, indigenous opportunities for our own people? Yes, we can. Grow our industries, boost employment, and in the next 10 years or more, we'll become net exporters. Because you see, what this will do is that you and I Africans will have an opportunity to begin to look at African goods will now continue to improve, as it were. Every year people are going to compete. If, for instance, we use a particular soap made in Nigeria, you have in the same shop made in Angola or made in Eritrea. For instance, if you begin to look at the ones that are better, if the one that is from Eritrea is better, obviously it will force the made in Nigerian one to begin to improve. I understand the issues to raise. That is a responsibility of government. And what we need to do also, what the trade unions and all those who are agitating need to do, is to begin to put government under pressure, that perchance you conclude your consultation and sign this agreement. This is going to be this and this and this are going to be the implication. So we need a master plan, we need a strategy, we need a roadmap to how we can overcome these challenges. Otherwise, we'll be on the receiving side. For me, the kind of population we have potentially does not place us on the receiving side. But it depends on the decisions we take or we do not take from now.
I'm just looking at how also this free trade agreement can also help us address the problem of smuggling. Because that would then mean that you can legitimately bring in those goods without necessarily smuggling them in. Bring them in legitimately because there's a free movement of goods and services and of course of persons. It's already there's already a legal framework for that. I'm just seeing how that can help us address the problem of smuggling. And again, for instance, the products that are smuggled out of Nigeria, whether Nigeria can legitimately, for instance, our petroleum products, for instance, are smuggled outside of this country.
On daily basis.
Even the ones that have been subsidized for us,
Yeah.
for our local consumption, find their ways outside of this country. Whether legitimately, for instance, a government corporation like the NNPC can take advantage of this Continental Free Trade Agreement to establish NNPC filling stations in countries of the West African coast and sell petroleum products legitimately.
For me,
And that would address the problem of Nigerian petroleum products, for instance, being smuggled out of the country.
my gut feeling would be yes. But again, is NNPC willing and able to be competitive? Is NNPC willing and able to become a profit center, not a cost center? There are a whole lot of reforms that need to happen within NNPC. As I speak to you, NNPC continues to be a cost center, deliberately so, designed, for the benefit of XYZ, until NNPC decides to be a profit center. All these things are possible. And I want to tell you that, that is a typical example of an organization that should be studying the implication of this free trade agreement and the opportunities it offers. That is an excellent way of spreading NNPC fuel station all over the continent.
And then you address the problem of smuggling.
Absolutely. Eliminate it completely. You eliminate it completely so that there will be no incentive for anybody to say, look, listen. Absolutely. So I think that, that is one important opportunity. And that smuggling is, I don't know, because it is illicit, you can't estimate, but it must be hundreds or millions of dollars every day, leaving our shores illegitimately. Yeah. So
during the scarcity, the GMD of NNPC, for instance, said about 4,500 trucks that were loaded in one day from Lagos are meant to come up north, all disappeared before. They've not gone to Abuja, actually. so you got to Abuja, not to talk of getting past Abuja to other parts of the north.
Not go to Lokoja, because it needs to get to Lokoja before getting to Abuja. So what I'm telling you is that what it means is that you can imagine how much lost in one day. So you can...
And these are products that have been subsidized.
Absolutely. So
at our own cost.
So you can imagine the amount of money that NNPC will be saving for Nigeria and Nigerians if, for instance, they understudy this agreement and look at the opportunities. So beyond NNPC, there are so many other opportunities this can offer Nigerians and Nigeria. But what we just need to do is to overcome our fears, exercise political will, and become futuristic in our thinking. Because 180 million people is no joke. And I want to also tell you, Gbenga, that if we do not take advantage of these opportunities, other countries will. Because they understand the huge market,
And
And
then
like
what
you
we are trying to prevent will
Absolutely.
eventually happen.
We will eventually happen.
eventually become the
We-
dumping ground.
Absolutely.
Because
We-
whether we like it or not, smugglers
will be there.
will be there.
Absolutely.
Ambitious Nigerian businessmen who want to make money
Go and
do
connive.
business
Absolutely, they'll go and
and turn Nigeria to a dumping
Absolutely.
ground.
So-
Forcefully.
So I think that is an important opportunity, and government is back on the desk of government. I hear there's a consultation going on.
Yes.
We wish that that is expedited very quickly, including consulting the parliament, because the parliament again has a role. When these agreements are signed, they need to ratify them and all of that. And we need to come up with a definite strategy, because African market is not a market we can ignore. And if we do well with this, you know, some of these things we're talking about that seem so impossible, you know, reducing poverty, reducing unemployment figures. I mean, if, for instance, I imagine that if I go to Zimbabwe, for instance, the economy of Zimbabwe is opening since your friend there, you know, was forced to either retirement or he left.
How is he, my friend?
You know, so you know, it's Kappa, your Kappa, I like actually. You know, so you know, things are opening up there. So I can decide to pack my bag. I say, look, let me go and try it out in Zimbabwe. You know, and if I go there and say, okay, these things are cheap in Zimbabwe, and a few things I can do. I mean, you know, I'm a able man. I'll just put them in my Ghana must go and start heading back to Nigeria. So some of those opportunities, in my view, are going to be helpful for an average Nigerian. But it depends on how fast we rise.
Okay.
You know,
Like I said, you know that this continental free trade market is just one of 3 innovative ideas that were brought up under the Agenda 2063 that the AU is pushing. The first one, actually, which Nigeria, I think, has ratified effortlessly, which a lot of people are also criticizing, is a single African air transport market. Was it right for a Nigeria that doesn't have a national carrier, for instance, to sign a kind of an agreement that will again take advantage, full advantage of the Nigerian hub when we don't have a national carrier?
Benga, how is that the problem of the continent? It's a Nigerian problem. So, for me, what it will do is
We have
to
signed an
force the
agreement
hand. Yes, it will
where
force the hand.
others will just be reaping money from us.
Because we have refused to
Ethiopian
reap.
Airlines will be free to fly to any airport in Nigeria.
But because
that
we refuse to grow our airline. Here we are, Nigerian Airways that we used to have here went down the drain. So what it means here, Benga, is back to the same thing I talked about. What are we doing with opportunities? We're not going to dwell on our affairs, are we? Forever. We're not going to continue to dwell on our affairs. We need to dwell on the opportunities. Nigeria deserves to have, let me tell you, in Ethiopia, their own oil is their airline. Why not Nigeria? When actually we are the market. So where will we be on the receiving side? Practically, how many airlines they fly out of Abuja every day? Only Abuja.
And
Okay?
I'm just wondering whether we will also not kill the existing local airlines. For instance, with the enormous market that is available in the aviation sector in Nigeria. If an airline like Ethiopian Airlines, for instance, that is the biggest in Africa and competes favorably globally, is allowed to have free access to the aviation sector in Nigeria. That means that the few airlines that we have, you can count the successful airlines in Nigeria, private airlines in Nigeria. You can count them on the fingers of one hand. Maybe if you start with Arik, Airpeace, Dana, Medview, you could probably add 3 more to it. And when you, even out of all of this, you probably have 3 dominant ones that are not even efficient in covering all the routes that you have within Nigeria. If you allow a successfully managed and efficiently managed airline like Ethiopia Airlines to come to Nigeria, and it's free borders, it can operate domestic airline in Nigeria. It can fly from Lagos to Abuja, it can fly from Abuja to Kano to everywhere. And you start competing with local companies that are not efficiently managed. What do you think this will do to the Nigerian run companies?
Is there anything wrong with a Nigerian company being efficient? Is efficiency, why are you scared of efficiency? Why are we scared of efficiency in Nigeria? Why are we scared of competition? I think that Ethiopian Airlines is a national carrier, and there's nothing wrong in Nigeria establishing her own national carrier and flying to Addis Ababa and flying to Nazareth in Ethiopia.
Even when we don't have a history of efficiency.
That's what I'm saying. So why is it that we, again, dwell on our fears? Why must our, permit me to call it national malady of inefficiency, be a problem of the economy?
The rest of Africa.
Absolutely. Why will we, in the pretense of patriotism or whatever you call it, why can't we deal with inefficiency? Why can't we say, okay, today, because of these issues that are fast pushing in, whether we like it or not, why can't we say, okay, let us have a national airline that is efficiently managed? What are we talking about? Is it not political will and capital?
Yeah, but that would also not happen overnight.
Yes.
It will take a long gestation period.
And I am saying that these are short-term challenges we must face, short-term competition we must not be afraid of, because they lead to long-term opportunities that your children and my children are going to benefit from. I will be happy to stand up in Owerri and I have a cocktail of airlines to fly to London. Okay? In Enugu, for
Will it matter
instance.
to you that none of this cocktail is Nigerian owned?
It will
that they are Ethiopian, Kenyan, South African airlines.
It will matter to me. But what I will also say is that, wow, here we are. We had governments, successive governments, that have refused to take advantage, of these opportunities. So what has made us drunk has made them bold, as Shakespeare would say. So at the end of the day, what is important is that there is service delivery, okay? And as we continue to Africanize and globalize, well, this capital flight, there is capital flight through looted assets. Every day, there is capital flight through smuggling.
Because all of these airlines,
our porous
are
borders.
yeah.
Why is it that we become sentimental about issues of capital flight when every day we talked about 300? How many trailer lorry loads of what do you call it now? The fuel thing that you talked about that disappeared. That is capital flight, illicit financial flows. Didn't you read the Thabo Mbeki report about illicit financial flows? These are monies stolen by African political elite, including Nigerian political elite, and they illicitly go and hide them in other economies. Didn't I tell you about the example of growing apart, about Nigeria and Indonesia? So capital flight is here with us. So some of these opportunities, for me, there are opportunities to reverse capital. Is Dangote not a Nigerian? So that means that whatever magic he did can be replicated. That means that Nigerian government can't say state government establish an airline. What are you talking about? State governments can. There are state governments that are liquid enough to establish an airline. So these things can.
These state governments that are not paying salaries.
Well, I'm not saying all state governments, okay?
They can team up.
Like I said,
a kind of regional agreement.
Did you hear that about Down? That Down initiative.
That's the development agenda for Western Nigeria.
Come on, that is a potential of establishing an airline that can do the
Lagos just joined them. You could imagine if states in Western Nigeria,
yes,
led by Lagos,
yes,
team up and establish an airline.
Yes, and then the airline flies to all parts of Africa.
Again, I'm wondering how we are going to be able to address our ego that is always coming into play. If two states, Osun and Oyo, couldn't manage a university without disagreeing as to who has the power to do what.
Well, I think,
and I'm wondering if they
have an airline, maybe they will shoot at each other. I think that yes, what you are saying is valid, but again, we must begin to some of these things. If you look at the intricacies of what the causes of the conflict may be, they may just be pecuniary. So we must begin to find where we place service, in our priorities, and again, bring in competition. You know, some of these things we're talking about, you know, competition and meritocracy will kill them. You know, if, for instance, we know that XYZ happened to, we hear about stories about how Nigerian airline of that time was converted to, you know,
family business.
Absolutely, and then people have free tickets, you know, go to London over the weekend and come back on Monday and all of that and all of that. I mean, that is the fastest way to kill.
In the interim, because I think we have signed this particular agreement, the Single African Air Transport Market.
Yeah.
It's like we have signed that one.
Yes, I am.
I'm just wondering if African countries that have the muscle to immediately begin to exercise the rights and privileges conferred by this agreement, what becomes of our local airlines? Is there anything the Nigerian government can do to immediately either protect them or come to their aid?
Well, I think that the biggest one part of
Because we don't have a national carrier, that's ruled out.
I wanted to tell you something.
So those local private airlines should enjoy our national flag, national flag protection.
Part of the pillars of this agreement, you know, is finance. You know, I think that one way that you know, governments can come into the aid of you know, local airlines and local companies is, you know, in the part of providing finance. And, you know, providing finance can only be done with the right kind of regulatory architecture and guarantees, for instance. And again, what you talked about, efficiency. You understand? So at the end of the day, those days of taking billions of naira in loan and diverting them, you know, those days must be in the past. And as far as I'm concerned, if there is a mechanism to put on all those checks and balances in place, you know, there is an opportunity for, you know, the Nigerian, I mean, there's an aviation intervention fund. Have you forgotten? What is that supposed to do?
It was looted.
so the aviation intervention fund, Wenga, is supposed to do what you just talked about. There is a Nigerian cabotage. There is the cabotage fund. Okay, that one is supposed to be the maritime sector for domestic ship owners and shipbuilders to give them financial incentives and loans, you know, so that, you know, they can grow. So what we are talking about is actually there's a provision for them. What it is that, like you said, it's been looted, and for that I don't have any comment.
All right, the last one is the one single passport for Africa. How do you see that working out as well? We already have some countries, I think 2 countries, Benin. I know of Benin, that has already said no visa for Africans anywhere you are, and you are visiting Benin, you can get visa on arrival. There's just one other African country that has that too. I don't know whether it's Kenya.
I think Nigeria is also doing visa on arrival. I don't know for which
not
countries.
For Oyinbos, not for fellow Africans. For Oyinbos who want to come and invest in Nigeria.
Okay.
But under this one single passport for Africa, that means once you acquire that African passport,
yes,
it can take you anywhere. It takes you to all parts of Africa. What does that make the Nigerian that has come under all manners of accusation? A black man is arrested somewhere. Even when he's not a Nigerian, he has a Nigerian passport.
Well, like I told you,
at least that will protect us now. We will be seen as, instead of saying, he's a Nigerian,
he's an
when it actually not a Nigerian, but because he can easily acquire he's a black man and he can easily acquire the Nigerian passport. But now he will be referred to as an African.
Yes, I think that it is a good thing that we can hide under that African umbrella. But beyond that too, I think that there should be a minimum requirement, if you ask me, for you to get slowly an African passport. For instance, you know, the issue of you know, prostitution rings and abuse and otherwise of migration opportunities. You know, the issue in Libya and all of that and all of that.
There's a lot of infrastructure that will also be required, particularly crime profiling.
Absolutely.
If you are a criminal wanted in one jurisdiction, it shouldn't be easy for you to cross to another jurisdiction or detected.
So it is that infrastructure, you know, and the content of that infrastructure that will be key. And secondly, what is the minimum requirement for you to get an African? Is it that is hawked on the streets and all of that? So if there's a minimum requirement, okay, as a professional, if you attend A, B, C, D, then you can get African passport. And based on that, we can also zero in on these migration challenges so that people don't take African passports, whether they're Nigerians or Sierra Leoneans, to go and commit havoc, you know,
Yes,
somewhere in the
well.
world. You know, that's a big concern.
Okay, I think there's a template, the ECOWAS template to copy and improve upon when it comes to that.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave it here. We're told that our time is up. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
your time.
Appreciate, yeah.
And welcome back, brother.
All right, thanks a lot.
Uche Igwe is a communications and outreach advisor, Open Government Partnership Nigeria. He has joined us this morning as we take a quick look at the African free trade market that was signed about 2 weeks ago in Kigali, Rwanda. We understand 44 African countries have already signed. Nigeria and South Africa, the two biggest economies, have not signed, but that has not delayed the takeoff of that agreement already. And we're looking at the implications on Nigeria and the Nigerian market. Thank you so much once again. I appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for investing your time with us. I'll see you. My name is Benga Aruleva.